Yo, what's going on, guys? It's G Miners here. There is way too much confusion in the Destiny community about resilience, resistance, and general forms of damage reduction. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down each, going over all of the values, and most importantly, explaining why running something like 100 resilience is completely useless in 99.9% of cases. So just as a quick overview, when it comes to staying alive in Destiny, the two most important aspects are how much damage you take and how quickly you can heal after taking this damage. We're going to be focusing on this first part, which is going to be comprised of three different sources. These are your resilience stat, your armor mods, and then anything in-game that provides an actual buff that in turn gives you damage resistance. Starting off with resilience, most people think of this stat as something that alters your total health and just makes you tankier. This is true, but at tier 10 resilience, you are barely tankier than a player with tier 0 resilience. On screen now is a breakdown of the resilience values currently in D2 as of this season, which is season 16. First and foremost, you can see that we have roughly 70 health or hit points. From here, the base value of our shield with tier 0 resilience is 115 HP, and this value only ever reaches 130 HP when your resilience is completely maxed out. This means you will be spending 100 stat points through your armor rolls and stat mods to get an extra 15 HP, which is only a 13% increase on your total shield. If you factor your health pool into play with this 70 extra HP, this is really only an 8% increase in the total amount of damage that you can take. The main argument that players have when they run high resilience is so that they don't get one-shot in things like GMs or other endgame content, but there are many other ways to get an extra boost in how much damage you can take that don't require resilience. Instead, the first place you should always look in order to increase how much damage you can take in total are with mods that actually reduce the amount of damage that you take from sources. Now, technically, these are called resist mods, but they offer damage reduction, and the only real reason I am making a distinction here is because we also have a buff in the game known as resist, which we will be going over later. So for these mods, I'm going to refer to their benefit as a reduction of damage, even though they do have the word resist in their name. In Destiny, there are four main types of damage reduction mods. The names of these are melee damage resist, sniper damage resist, concussive dampener, and then the elemental resistance mods. Elemental resistance mods are for each element that exists in the game, so there is one for void, arc, solar, and stasis. Running one copy of any of these mods provides a 25% damage reduction for the damage type of the mod. Running two copies brings this up to 40%. Which mods you run do end up making a big difference, so I'm going to be going over why I think certain mods should be used and why others are completely overrated. Starting with one of the most overrated mods, many players run sniper resistance in endgame content because snipers are notoriously known for their one-shot capabilities. This mod offers damage resistance to any damage type as long as you receive that damage from 30 meters away or more, which means this mod is completely distance-based. So the only time you get resistance is when enemies are super far away, so sniper resistance doesn't actually recognize sniper enemy types in the game. The same thing is going to be true with the melee resistance mods. These operate in something like a 4-meter area or closer, which will always protect you against melee damage, but that is all it will realistically ever do. In any endgame activity, enemy melees and snipers are going to be dealing a particular element type for their damage. For this reason, it is almost always better to run elemental resistance mods over sniper and melee damage resistance. This especially reigns true with Master Raids and Grandmaster Nightfalls because enemies that are more likely to one-shot you usually deal one damage type that fits the enemy race and the activity you are doing. A perfect example is the Scarlet Keep Strike, where most of the champions, knights, and even the boss all deal arc damage. A good amount of the other enemy types like Unstop Ogres, Shriekers, and Acolytes deal void damage as well, so running an arc damage resistance mod and a void one might be your best bet, as you can cover multiple different enemy types with just a single damage reduction mod. With the exact same logic, I see a lot of players throwing on Concussive Dampener to help against bosses. Tons of players use this against Templar in Master Vogue, but by using these mods, you limit yourself to damage reduction against splash damage only. Using elemental versions would protect you against damage from the boss and enemies that are not just dealing splash damage. I also don't know if Concussive Dampener only protects you from splash damage, or if it covers you for the initial direct impact damage that enemies are dealing. So all in all, there's really no point to running this mod, in my opinion, unless you have a ton of different elemental splash damage enemies dealing damage at one time. So as a recap, elemental damage reduction mods are going to be the best for most activities. If you're taking a lot of damage from snipers or bosses dealing splash damage, you should ask yourself if you really need sniper resist or concussive dampener, or if an elemental mod would be better, because chances are it would be. As I mentioned earlier, we also have the resist buff. Resist back in season 15 or last season meant that for each stack you would gain 12.5% damage reduction from all sources, no matter what it was. The OG Protective Light mod used to give ×4 resist, which meant 50% damage reduction when procced, which was insane. The issue now is that Protective Light was nerfed to a 10% reduction, but still offers ×1 resist, and Well of Tenacity, which we know to be a 50% reduction in damage, only provides ×3 resist. So clearly these values have either changed, or something in either Well of Tenacity or Protective Light is overriding the resist values that we see on screen. Either way, I'm going to be going over everything in game now and comparing the damage I take on my shield with different levels of resist. You can see all the sources I'm testing on screen now, but before I do test them, if you guys do find this video useful, don't forget to drop a like and sub down below. 85% of you guys are not subscribed. Subbing is completely free, it helps me out a ton, and you can always change your mind later. So just as a baseline, when using a Sniper Vandal for testing, after one shot with no resistance mods and none of the elemental or sniper damage reduction mods, we take around 82 pixels of damage. I'm saying around because obviously between tests there might be a few pixels in game that end up getting rounded. We took this amount of damage at tier 3 resilience, which I kept the exact same for all of the tests I did. With a single arc resist mod on, this decreased the damage to 62 pixels, and with 2 copies, this was reduced to 50 pixels. These reductions come out to 25.4% and 40.5%, so these values are right on with what we expected, just a bit off again from the rounding of pixels. Using the exact same method for finding the percentage reduction in damage taken, Stag at ×2 resist was a 25.4% reduction, which was expected. Protective Light at ×1 resist was 9.8% reduction, which was expected from what Bungie told us, but doesn't line up with the ×1 resist. Well of Tenacity at ×3 resist was shockingly at a 40.5% reduction, which makes no sense considering ×3 resist should be 37.5%, and the fact that Bungie officially announced that it was at 50% a few months back, so not really sure what's going on with Well of Tenacity. Warmind's protection was among the highest of the single reduction that we received at 48.8%. Last I heard this was at 50%, so this is most likely just a high case of pixelation error. Whisper of Chains at ×1 resistance was surprisingly giving us a 40.5% damage reduction when it should only be a third of that at like 12.5%. Renewal Grasp Grenades, which are ×2 resistance, was a 25.4% damage reduction, so that was right where it should be. Combining Renewal and Whisper of Chains for ×3 resist should have been a 37.5% reduction, but this was actually the highest damage reduction we got at 54.9%. At first I thought these values just got combined like normal with resist, but if they did, we would have gotten around a 65% damage reduction. 54.9% means we are somehow missing 10% of a value that is already not where it should be, so Whisper of Chains is definitely not working even close to as intended. And then lastly, Omnioculus, which was ×4 resist, gave us exactly 50% damage reduction, so this was by far the most accurate value we got, and it is exactly where it should be. I honestly did not expect things to be nearly as bad as they are right now, but the main takeaway from this should be that the best resist sources in the game currently are number 1, Renewal Grasps plus Whisper of Chains, but if you don't have Renewal, then honestly just Whisper of Chains itself is still great. Second is going to be Warmind's Protection, which is super easy to use and extremely viable for teams to run, as you will have Warmind cells everywhere, and Global Reach will make these even better. Third up is Stag Rifts, which are actually better than they seem because when on a healing rift, these will heal you on top of the 25% reduction you're getting. And then number 4, I threw this on the list, but it's Omnioculus, which is technically larger than Warmind Cell and Stag Rifts, but you need to be invisible while gaining the resist value, so in a sense I think this is completely useless, but it could still save your life here and there. The very last thing in game that provides damage reduction is the brand new Origin trait Land Tank. I have a link in the description to a Reddit post that covers this pretty well. Ultimately, Land Tank is going to give you 1 tier of resilience and 5% damage reduction per stack that you have. This is going to go up to 3 stacks in total, which is a solid 15% damage reduction to all incoming damage, but also you will get increased resistance from the extra resilience stats. Personally, the only time I think this extra 15% would realistically be needed is in the highest level of endgame content, which would be Master Raids and GMs. The issue here is in GMs, you are almost never going to be able to maintain this buff, nor run most of the weapons that have this origin trait. In Master Raids, there is a bit more room for running these weapons, especially something like Explosive Personality, but it just comes down to what is most efficient to run. Overall, I don't think Land Tank is going to be the best thing in the world, but there are definitely some niche situations where it could help. This is everything you need to know about resilience, damage reduction, and damage resistance inside of Destiny 2. If you guys want to see a follow-up video where I try to stack up as many resistance sources as possible to see the max damage reduction you can get in the game, make sure to drop a like and let me know in the comments below. Anyways, that's all for this video, guys. As always, have a good one. Peace.